All right. It is now just after 9 o'clock. I'd like to call to order the November 5th meeting of the Town of Sunset Beach Planning Board. We do have a quorum. Is everyone happy with the agenda? Any changes recommended to the agenda? If not, let's recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any public comments in the back room? I'm sorry?
You said none.
No? Okay. If not, we will move on to old business. Final review of the UDO changes recommended to comply with legislation 160D. At our October 15th meeting, Wes McLeod of the Cape Fear Council of Governments presented to us changes that he recommended be made to the UDO to be compliant with the General Statute 160D, which is titled Local Planning and Development Regulations. He had gone through the UDO in its entirety, had changes reflected on a total of 58 pages from that document, covering Articles 1 through 4, Articles 6 and 7, 11 through 13, and the appendix. He has since gone back and made just a very few number of changes that we had recommended be made. Thus, we have here today an action document. We're here to decide if, in fact, we're satisfied with all of these changes. So, decide as to whether we want to move forward with it. So are there any questions or comments from anyone on it?
Well, other than the statement of consistency that I sent an email on, didn't change the year. But I don't know, is that officially part of the document or not? I guess that was the only thing I found. The year wasn't changed from 2016 to 17. So other than that, it's fine with me. It was just a typo there.
Yeah, and it's, so long as it's your land use plan, comp plan, and yeah, it's just a typo. And I didn't recall that. Does this need to be on? It does, yes, sir. Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, that can be modified. It's the statement just requires you to reference a comp plan. It doesn't necessarily. You're fine, but we can modify that. It doesn't impact the amendments.
I just saw it as being a procedural thing, not necessarily a part of the UDO.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Noel?
Under the definitions, large-scale rezoning, a zoning map amendment that proposes a change of zoning designation of more than 50 properties owned by at least 50 different property owners. So 50 properties that are owned by one owner would not be a large-scale rezoning?
Yes, per the statute.
Okay.
Let me read.
Should it be and owned then by, so that it's clear that it's both the number of properties and the number of owners?
It's got to be, different property owners, and in the distinction, I believe, for the statutory purposes, it has to do with mailing. And so you can imagine if it's 50 properties, one owner, not a big deal to send one envelope. But if there's 50 different or more owners, then the town is expending, and our jurisdictions across the state, substantial amount of funds to send mailers
Right.
to 100 different folks. And so the option is there in the statute that you can do a half-page ad in lieu of doing those individual mailers.
Would it be better instead of a comma to say "and," so that it was clear that both apply?
Sure. This is not a town rule. This is statute, and that's exactly how the
Oh,
statute.
the language?
The language is exactly that way, and I understand that, but that's it's not my language.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Well,
Any other comments? Not, then I'd like to make a motion that we do approve the proposed changes to the town's UDO and move it forward to council for their approval, and that we find the changes are consistent with the Town of Sunset Beach's 2017 land use plan, and it is consistent with required changes necessary to comply with North Carolina General Statute 160D, titled Local Planning and Development Regulations. Second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Administrative items?
Yes.
Director McLeod?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. So I did want to give you a quick update. The town has, sent an offer, and I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe there has been a person that's accepted the job. And so there's an interview this week. I need to confirm with Lisa if he's formally accepted it, but I believe he has, and at least the tentative start date for that individual would be December 3rd. His name's Chad Stardumsky. He is actually from Brunswick County, and he has worked in Oak Island, town of Burgaw, and now he's with Pender County Planning and Development. He's really excited to come be a part of the town and serve as director. He is a younger guy, but he does have enough experience to handle this job. He's looking forward to also working with you guys. He's familiar with working with Oak Island and having a lot of interaction with the board and having projects to work on with you guys. We're gonna, of course, I'm gonna be available as part of our agreement with the town to make sure that the transition occurs smoothly. As he has questions, ensure that he asks them so that he doesn't find himself in a peculiar position. So it will be, I won't be here for long, but I will be in the background and here as needed. I will be at the December 3rd meeting to help welcome him and as well.
Can I ask what his education is? Do you know?
Sure. He went to East Carolina University, and I believe he got his degree in urban regional planning, but I'm not entirely sure. And education is important, but what I've found with these types of jobs, it's the experience that's really key, and understanding, your ordinance and things of that nature. So that, obviously he's going to have some time to get used to figuring out all the ins and outs of the ordinance and how things work around here. But we feel confident that it's going to be a good fit to for the town, and he's really looking forward to being here for quite some time. He's really looking forward to working in Brunswick County. So he lives in Winnebago, which is 30 minutes or so. It's just before you get into Wilmington on 17.
Good, that's good news.
We will see if, as far as upcoming agenda items for you all, there has been a major site plan submitted for the amenity center for the sanctuary at Angel's Trace, and we have received that site plan. It's gone to the technical review committee, and I have submitted comments back to them, you know, with the note that if they want to be considered for the December 3rd planning board meeting, they'll need to address all those comments back to us by November 20th. So we'll see if that happens, but just to give you a heads up, you may have a site plan approval, and that's, you know, it's not a multifamily project or anything like that. This is basically their clubhouse and their pool.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be anything controversial, but we want to make sure that, you know, the plan is obviously in conformance with the town's UDO.
I was going to suggest another item for the December 5th meeting. We had canceled our March 19th meeting due to the COVID. And there were a couple of items on that agenda that we kind of walked through largely, and I think we could probably finish up pretty easily if we spent a meeting or two on it. One was tree protection and plant species list. Plant species list just being an appendix item for the UDO. Certainly no changes there required, I don't believe. But we were still wrestling with the whole question of heritage tree protection. So I think we, you know, should be able to clean that up and get it added to the UDO without too much to do. And I think it's important considering the amount of development that's been taking place. And I would welcome your thoughts on the document as it stands today, Wes. You know, the one thing we've wrestled with or recognized is that, you know, there really is no replacing a 24-inch diameter live oak tree. So what can you do to minimize them being removed? So I think in that same agenda, we had a document that dealt with sidewalks. Again, very appropriate for everything that's taking place today. And there was just a housekeeping item on fences, as I recall. So perhaps that's something we could get back to as opposed to getting into the items that appear on our current directives to you, Wes, being the ETJ rezoning and review of density. I mean, they're all pretty heavy topics, and so that would be my recommendation.
And Cindy, are those text amendments that were in the process of being worked on, or are these discussion items, or it's Tom?
Strictly discussion items. We had discussed the tree protection, I think, on at least 2 occasions. We're coming back for further discussion at that March 19th meeting, if that's what it was. I would like to think that with perhaps one more discussion, we could arrive at some decisions following that, then, you know, bring it forward as an action item.
And as far as so, I guess for December, I would be prepared to discuss those items and figure out kind of. I mean, have you guys discussed these things? Sounds like
the tree one we went through a couple times, right?
Yeah, we've been through it a couple of times.
I thought there was actually a draft text amendment. I didn't pull that file
So
out.
there certainly is a document you can review with the latest changes that we've made, and
I know, and I recently had to, and I've recently used your tree preservation standards, and that's something that we worked on 5-6 years ago as well, or at least we amended it for some golf course considerations.
Yes.
I think is what we did. In the way your rule is now, it's sort of a 1-to-1 replacement. But in those instances where, yes, you have that 24-inch live oak, it would be allowed to be removed, but it would just have to be mitigated. And so those if I recall, those tree inches, caliper inches that are removed have to be replaced.
There was a table. We had a table.
Yep.
So I believe we had gone over the draft. At least we had a discussion. There was like a draft. We had talked about the draft, maybe suggested some revisions.
yeah, which were
And I
included
believe
in that
the
package.
step, I don't have the file in front of me for that meeting, was revisions to that draft for us then to, I guess, finalize and move towards a action item. Right, so we gotta go back to either the 319 meeting or the one before to see where we were,
Yeah, I think,
where we left it.
yeah, get the March 19th meeting package back out.
Okay.
It included some changes that you had recommended
Right.
independently that we never discussed as a group. And I guess, something that caught my eye, one of our recent subdivision approvals was for Bird's Watch in Sea Trail. And we raised a question when we were going over the package as to the tree removal plan that they had provided to us, and it didn't show that an awful lot of trees were going to be taken out. And the answer was that they were initially only going to take out the trees that were needed to be taken out to clear the road right-of-ways. And they were not going to take any trees out up front on the lots on which homes were going to be built. And I thought that's great, as opposed to just going in and clear cutting an entire area, which we see happening. There may be times when you'd have to do the clear cutting because of stormwater requirements and that sort of thing. But I'd like to entertain the notion of just trying to hang on to those trees until we see that they're really essential to come down, for building purposes. So that's just a consideration, I think.
That's a tough thing. I know in across our jurisdictions, there is only recently New Hanover County put into place a rule that if you have a tree, I can't remember what the caliper size is, but it's north of 20 or something to that effect, that it cannot be removed. I think and it's only live oaks. So I think it's, obviously it's a pine or some of these laurel oaks that only have a 50-year or less lifespan anyways. You're still going to be able to remove those. But I'll have to look, and you guys have probably been made aware the legislature has been a little bit active on tree preservation. There was an initial bill filed in this last session that was going to preempt local governments unless they had special legislation from doing tree preservation. So I just want you to be aware of that. And I don't believe Sunset Beach has special legislation. There's a couple in our jurisdiction that do. But you do have the authority, at least now, that you could likely put in something that, it would be my recommendation that it be, very specific, limited to, a very small species group and something that would be a fairly large tree, to try to have folks plan around it, unless in the instance that, there's some sort of wastewater utility or roadway infrastructure otherwise, trying to figure out, have those land planners work around that particular type of tree. Is sidewalks, was that, I'll just go back and look at this.
Yeah, it was really just a first-time draft.
Okay.
It was really just putting in a requirement for what we've been seeing happening with all the recent subdivisions. Virtually every one of them has included sidewalks.
Okay.
I have some questions about the draft as it was written, but I think, be a package for us to discuss. It's already there.
Yes, and I anticipate that a lot of this that Chad is going to end up working with you all on. Obviously, I'll be here to help, and some of those bigger picture items, I'll need to talk to Lisa about. We provided an overview about the merits of ETJ expansion to the town of Leland, and I anticipate that similar type of presentation may be worthwhile here. Even if it's a joint between council and planning board, or just planning board, because there's a lot of things to consider with that. Now, but I don't think were you referring to ETJ rezoning, not ETJ expansion?
Rezoning.
Rezoning, yeah.
Okay, all right. That's all I have for any of my comments.
I do have one more thing. Not sure exactly how it would be handled, but We know that on September 22nd, Town Council had as an agenda item a discussion about managing town growth. And Todd did a presentation at that meeting, and we had known it was going to be taking place and had planned at our next meeting, which was October 1st meeting, for Todd to present to the planning board some of the highlights from that discussion. I watched the discussion on YouTube, Town Council discussion on YouTube, and knowing that I was not going to be able to attend the October 1st meeting, I provided some comments to Todd, to Lisa, to the mayor and council. And I had hoped that Todd would have reviewed that at the 10-1 meeting, which I don't believe he did. Some of what I had in the comments, related to just some statements that were made in regard to the design of the overlay district, I'm sorry, and, some questioning about, some of the design standards that we adopted. In my response, I just provided some answers as to why we did what we did. It was done for a specific reason. Comments were made in regard to foreign-based code as to what might have happened at Pelican Square had we had that in effect. At the time it was being developed, I just made sure everyone was aware that the plan that was presented to us did include not only commercial development, but it had single-family development, it had multifamily development. So it was planned to be a mixed-use project. And only the first phase of it has taken place and hasn't gone beyond the first phase because they haven't been able to rent the buildings that they've already renovated to bring up to the overlay district standards. So those were just some comments I made just for clarity purposes. But there were two things that I did say that I would like to have noted in our minutes somewhere, and that's where my question comes up, whether 10-1 minutes or today's meeting minutes.
Okay.
But there was two statements Todd made which I didn't necessarily agree with. One was that he did not believe that any changes in zoning needed to take place on the island, on Sunset Beach Island. And we to this day do allow on Beach Business 1 multifamily development as an allowed use, not an encouraged use, but an allowed use. If you go back to the survey that was taken in developing the land use plan, I think almost 90% of the people that responded said we should not have multifamily on the island. So I would like to revisit that, or at least discuss it a little bit further. The other comment that had been made at the town council meeting was that no changes, in Todd's opinion, were required in mixed-use district or in Sea Trail. And my response to that was we know that some 240 acres have just been purchased in Sea Trail for development, and I think that we should at least take a look at where those parcels lie, and would there be any allowable development there that could jeopardize the existing single-family development. So, in my mind, I don't think we should just write off that we shouldn't do anything. I think we should at least look at it. Those are the couple of comments I made. I don't know how you want to handle them. This was, what I had sent out, Cindy, if you have an interest in it.
And I do recall both those things I think were addressed as part of the land use plan, particularly MR3, and the fact that it's sort of a open checkbook, if you will, or blank slate for almost any use. And I think that Sea Trail and that whole area is all MR3. I know as part of the land use plan, it was, one of the recommendations based on citizen comments and other things that, potentially that district be pared down, allow multifamily where it exists. Certainly, move towards any efforts to help protect the golf course, at least the fairways themselves. All those types of things were all brought up as a result of the land use plan years ago.
But at the 10-1 meeting, I mean, we did have a lengthy discussion on that. I think you weren't here, Tom, maybe that,
The October 1st meeting? No,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
not.
Okay, which we don't have minutes for yet, right?
No,
Okay.
that's what
My
I was,
note said, I mean, we had an extensive discussion on that, where we went over a number of items, and actually, there's some things I wanted to see if we could add to the future agendas on that. I guess for some reason, the council decided we needed a second look at the memo, but anyway, we went over that in great detail, and that took that was like a 2.5-hour meeting, almost to noon, that we went over, Todd went over maps, and we went over that thing. I don't remember what exactly he said about the island and the beach. It did come up, but he had some reasoning behind that. I just can't recall. It might be in the minutes, it might not.
all right, well, we can hold it until the minutes get ready, we
Right.
get prepared.
And then,
done.
we certainly addressed the golf holes, about rezoning those to AF1. Okay? That's in Sea Trail and elsewhere. We did talk
Sandpit.
extensively about the ETJ. Now, I created, and we've exchanged maps before Todd left. I put together a little map of my own and some changes to the zoning district, which I was hoping maybe we can add to a future or agenda to be maybe to talk about, changing that large area of ETJ to something else. So I have sort of a proposal, I guess you want to call it that, or at least a talking paper and changes to that zoning MR3 for less density. And there was the density number we talked about extensively, that 17.1, where it came from out of the land use plan. And I believe we kicked around some ideas of lowering that to 12 was my suggestion. Todd said maybe 10. But there was just that one number, that 17.1, that I don't think anyone was clear where it came from exactly, except it's in the land use plan. And got into zoning, and we kind of agreed we need to review that and change that. So I guess I don't know where to go with this whole thing, except for future agenda items, clearly we need to take this up since the council decided we needed to look at the same memo twice, so they clearly want us to do something. Like I said, I have a proposal I'd like to get, I don't know.
Yeah, I know we must have a much broader discussion ahead of us.
Right.
I just wanted to be sure
But
that
we did
don't
in
write
that
anything
meeting,
off.
like you say, we'll have to go over those minutes. I think touch on the items that you mentioned that are concerning. We did talk about Sea Trail and what they're doing with what the Riptide is doing. And if I recall correctly, Todd's position was their plan is to proceed consistent with what's always been there and has been in the plan originally, or land use plan for Sea Trail. They're doing what they're agreed to. And I don't remember what the discussion was on the beach. There was something, we talked about that. And he did have an answer for, I think, the question you have on that multi-family part. I just don't remember his answer. It's terrible, it's only 10-1. And I don't remember the detail on that, so we may look in the minutes. And the other thing we talked about that I'd like to add on the future amendment was taking the overlays architectural plan, which I think is Article 6, Paragraph 5 and on, and extend that as a architectural guidelines for all commercial and mixed use. So we have town consistency. So I believe that's Article 6, Paragraph 5 through the end, I guess. But instead of making those just the guidelines for the overlay district, is cut that out of that, or copy that out of that section and make it an architectural guideline to apply to all mixed use and commercial zoning areas in Sunset Beach, so it's consistent across the board, since we apparently are happy with that text for the overlay district. It should be fine everywhere else, because we don't have anything. It's only that we understand that only applied to the overlay district, those guidelines, and not to anything else. So that we could easily just copy that section and make it an architectural guideline for all mixed use and commercial development, so we're consistent across the whole town. So whatever it takes to add that to some January or whatever agenda item, and then so that we certainly can respond to the, and I think the final thing my note says on that 10-1 meeting, which didn't happen, of course, was Todd was to kind of put a priority list together on the things we had talked about to satisfy the memo we got saying we're supposed to look at these density requirements. And I'm sure he probably never got to that before he left, but that's my final note on what he was supposed to do.
So that memo, from what I understand, is what we need to be working on first. Those things are the priority, but from my notes, the only discussion about BB1 density was that the town council recommended that that not be considered, and that we can focus on it at another time, but this council directive is a priority at this time.
So in light of that, just making sure we add these items to our future agendas.
Yeah. Yeah, we know they're coming,
Yeah.
but they're broad subjects, broad topics of discussion. So. Anything else?
No, sir, not for me.
Do we have any public comments? If not, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So- Yeah, yeah.